Hi, I'm Virginia from Write Clinic, and welcome to the Medical Writing Uncut podcast. Here with me today is Geneviève. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited for this episode because Geneviève has a fantastic background in medical writing, and she's going to share everything that she does and also her top tips. So, Geneviève, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm Geneviève. I'm a freelance medical writer, and maybe something about my background. So I have studied biology and specialized in neuroscience during my master. And I did my PhD in the hearing research field. And now I'm a freelance medical writer since 1.5 years. I'm located in Oldenburg, which is in the northwest of Germany, so close to the Netherlands and close to Bremen, Hamburg, maybe too. Yeah.
Awesome. So, how did you get started as a medical writer?
So I think the first touching point with medical writing was really during my PhD, where I submitted my first manuscript to a journal. Although back then I didn't heard the term medical writing, I have to admit. It was more like, you're doing a PhD, you present your work, your data and everything. So this was really the first touching point. And yeah, after my PhD, for me, it was important to apply my knowledge that I gained. So I did basic research in the hearing research field, but my PhD thesis was located in a cluster of excellence. So there were many scientists collaborating together. So PhD, postdocs, PIs, all working in the hearing field. And there I get also, so there were also scientists doing applied science. So they were already working with medical devices like hearing aids, cochlear implants, and so. So this was the first touching point with the medical device industry back then. And after my PhD, I was like, it would be great to apply the knowledge now. And I was looking for open positions in the industry. And there I saw the first time really, job positions for medical writing for medical device industry. And during my application process. So I applied for several medical writing positions. I got an offer of a medical device manufacturer for implantable hearing solution as a clinical evaluations manager. And this was like the journey to medical writing.
That's really cool. So, how have you gone from working as a medical writer in medical devices to now being freelance? How did you kind of make that change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked 3.5 years for this medical device manufacturer. I learned a lot during that time. It was a really steep learning curve, especially at the beginning, because if you're coming from science, it's definitely different to industry, I would say. So there are many new things you need to learn, terms that are used that you never heard of before, regulations. And after 3.5 years, I was looking for more flexibility, I would say, but also to deepen my knowledge, because of course, if you're working for one medical device manufacturer, maybe also with a small portfolio, you are only working on these medical devices. And now as a freelancer, I worked on many different medical devices, from software to implants, surgical instruments, aesthetic medical devices. So it covers nearly everything.
I love that. I think that's such a great move because it expands your knowledge base of all the different
Mm-hmm.
types of medical devices and also the different regulations around them. So you mentioned there, you've got surgical instruments, but you've also got software. So software can also be classed as a medical device depending on what it is. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something that not many people know, that there are regulations now around software as well as like physical medical devices. Because some people think medical device, it's something that you hold in your hand and, you hold your phone in your hand, but the software is still part
Exactly.
of the device. So that's really interesting. So when you said it was a steep learning curve, what would be your top tips for people who want to learn more about being a medical writer in the medical devices industry?
Mm. Yeah, maybe something general. What I'm doing as a clinical evaluation manager is mainly I'm reading a lot of literature. So you need to to love reading, I would say, and also have an understanding of scientific research. So what is really a good publication? Maybe where are flaws in the publication that you can detect it, because in the end, a clinical evaluation is a document that is necessary to submit to the notified body in different countries if you want to put your device out of the market and get approval all over the world. Of course, you have the European market, US, Chinese, and so on. And the clinical evaluation process So the goal is that you show that the device is working as it should be. So you show the performance, but also the safety, and that of course the benefit outweighs the risk in the end. So that is the overall goal. So what you're doing mainly is screening literature, appraisal literature, and also analyzing literature. You work with different stakeholders. For example, in a company, you work with different departments like research and development, regulatory affairs, marketing. So you need good communication skills, I would say. And also a really organized way of working, because it's a highly regulated environment, of course. It's not like writing a manuscript, which is maybe a little bit more creative, I would say, because it's highly regulated. You have many regulations that you need to apply. So you need to get familiar with the different regulations for the different countries on clinical evaluations. And also many times there are tight deadlines that you need to, fill.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really, really helpful for people who don't know much about medical device writing, as a medical writer. So how would you say that you approached finding different clients? Did you have a portfolio to say that certain regulations for certain medical devices? What was your approach to, you've learned all of these skills, and then how did you kind of package those skills so that you could find clients as a freelancer?
Yeah, a writing portfolio is a little bit hard in this niche, I would say, because normally it's all confidential what you're working on. So you can't really show that you've written like a clinical evaluation report or something like that. So that's a little bit difficult. What I'm doing, I'm always trying to share tips and tricks on LinkedIn, on the professional side. So what is really necessary for a clinical evaluation report, how you conduct really a systematic search, what steps do you need to know, to do, and things like that. So most of the clients you can find, I would say, is on LinkedIn, really showing up, posting content, sharing tips and tricks, show that, you're a profession. And what I'm also doing, attending regularly webinars or also conferences. There's the European Medical Writing Association, where there's also workshops on medical devices, where you can also learn on clinical evaluation, post-market, documents and things like that. So that's also really helpful to attend them, but also to network with other freelance medical writers and share your insights and thoughts and questions, because normally the other freelance medical writers are really happy to help.
That's really nice. I love that. I think the community generally is very approachable, so
Yeah.
you can usually ask people for help, which is really nice. And I also love that, you didn't let the idea of having a portfolio stop you. If you explain how you do something, that's just as good as having a complete piece of work, because that's usually what your skill is as a regulatory, medical writer in medical devices. You are essentially putting documents together, but making sure that they meet standards, like you said, reading the literature, looking at what might be missing and evaluating them. So that is super cool. And so finally, what's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, there are many more new client projects working with different devices, of course. So I'm always happy to support medical device manufacturers to put together the clinical evaluation documents. So there are several documents that are necessary for the submission. I'm mainly working for the European market, but also for the Chinese market, which is quite interesting because it's getting bigger and bigger in the last years. And I'm also offering services for systematic literature searches, like the state-of-the-art literature search and things like that.
Oh, that's really interesting. How do you, or can I ask, how do you
Yeah.
do your systematic searches?
Yeah, there are quite strict rules to that. So in the clinical evaluation process, it's necessary to plan everything and also to write everything down, because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So it's really, so what you really need to do is like you set up a search protocol really. So what keywords do you use? On which database did you search? When did you search? What are the hits? What are your inclusion, exclusion criteria? That needs to be defined, everything before the search is conducted. And then you just apply all the steps from your protocol to the literature search. So you have specific steps. You can use, for example, for the keywords, you can use the PICO process, like patient, intervention, comparator outcome, for example. But this always depends, of course, on the device or what you're really looking for. You need to adapt this. Then you have your inclusion, exclusion criteria, which is really important to define beforehand so that you have a systematic search that can also be reproduced later on. For example, if you submit it to the notified body, they have needs to be that they have the chance to redo the search and get the similar results.
Oh, brilliant. And so I have to ask the forbidden question. Do you use AI?
No. No, not yet. I mean, there are many things out there that help with the literature search, at least organizing, for example, maybe scanning also for important parts in the literature, like how many people were included, how many patients were included in the study, things like that. I know they're out there and they can definitely help, I think, in the future. But for now, I'm still relying on myself because I'm always, I mean, yeah, you shouldn't trust the AI 100%, I would say. I mean, they can definitely do something, can support and help you, but yeah, especially with the analyzing appraisal, yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, not yet, maybe in future. I agree. I think the technology needs some work. And also,
Yeah.
I read some articles where they said people who use AI, their brain development is less. And that made me really stressed. So I, tried to avoid it. Actually, I don't use it at all, only maybe just to like summarize something like this podcast, for example. So yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. I will leave a link to your LinkedIn so people can follow you on LinkedIn. And anything else you want me to link to, I'll put it in the video description. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.